What if one of the most normal things in your life was once so strange, so rare, and so sacred that almost nobody on earth was allowed to do it? Today, birthdays feel automatic. You get cake. You hear the song. Maybe you get older and pretend not to care, but deep down, you still notice the day. But birthdays were not always a cheerful tradition for everyone. In fact, for most of human history, regular people did not celebrate their birthdays at all. So when did humans actually begin celebrating birthdays the way we do now? The answer is far older, stranger, and more human than most people realize. If you go back far enough, the first clue does not look like a child's party at all. One of the earliest things historians point to is ancient Egypt, where a ruler's birthday was not necessarily the day he was physically born. It could mean the day a pharaoh was crowned and symbolically transformed into a god king. In other words, the earliest birthday-like celebrations were less about "you were born" and more about "you became something sacred." That matters because it tells us that the earliest birthday observances were not casual. They were ceremonial. A birthday, in its oldest form, was a statement that this person stood at the center of the world. That helps explain why ordinary people did not usually get birthday celebrations in the ancient world. Most human beings were too busy surviving. Birth records were often imprecise, infant mortality was high, and age itself was not always tracked the way it is now. If your society measured life by harvests, rulers, wars, and seasons, a personal annual milestone did not automatically become a cultural event. The calendar had to become personal before a birthday could become personal. And here is where the story gets more interesting. Ancient Greece seems to have helped push birthdays closer to what we would recognize today. The Greeks made offerings to gods and goddesses on special dates associated with them. And one tradition often linked to birthday history involves round cakes offered to Artemis, the goddess associated with the moon. Some historians and cultural writers connect those round cakes, sometimes lit with candles to resemble the moon's glow, to later birthday cake traditions. We should be careful here. This was not yet your modern birthday party. But the idea that a special date could be marked with sweet food, candles, and symbolic light starts to feel much more familiar. The birthday was moving from pure royal ceremony toward ritualized commemoration. The Greeks also lived in a world full of spiritual risk. Birth, death, and transitions were dangerous thresholds. In many old cultures, being born was not just biological. Your entry into life exposed you to fate, divine attention, and unseen forces. That may sound distant, but it helps explain later birthday customs that seem weird on the surface. Candles were not just decorative. Wishes were not just cute. Noise, fire, gifts, and gatherings could all carry protective meanings. A birthday was not always "let's party." Sometimes it was, "let's keep the bad things away while marking a vulnerable passage through time." Then came the Romans, and this is where birthdays begin to look much more like a social custom. In Rome, birthdays were celebrated for ordinary free male citizens, at least more than in earlier royal-only traditions. People gave gifts, held banquets, wrote birthday poems. Families honored the protective spirit of the head of the household, known as the genius, on his birthday. The very fact that a birthday could belong to someone who was not a god king was a huge shift. It meant the day had become more personal, more domestic, and more repeatable. But Rome helped normalize the idea that a person's annual birth date could be socially marked. That is a major turning point in birthday history. And now we hit one of the most surprising twists in the story. Early Christians did not eagerly embrace birthdays. Fathers criticized the pagan custom of celebrating birthdays and preferred honoring martyrs on the day of their death, which they saw as a kind of true spiritual birth. Even Jesus' birth was not widely celebrated by Christians in the earliest centuries the way it would be later. That means birthday parties, as a regular accepted custom, did not just march neatly from Egypt to Greece to Rome to us. There was resistance. That single detail changes the whole story because it shows that birthdays were never inevitable. They had to survive disapproval. They had to become culturally acceptable again. And once you realize that, you stop seeing birthdays as a trivial tradition and start seeing them as a social invention that had to be renegotiated over centuries. In the medieval world, Identity was still deeply tied to religion, family, and place. But over time, more attention was paid to personal milestones, named feast days, and family records. In many parts of Europe, name days mattered as much as or more than birthdays, because saints' feast days were easier to anchor in Christian culture than older pagan-style birth observances. The birthday did not return in one clean leap. It often shared space with other ways of honoring the person. In some communities, your saint's day may have mattered more than the day you were born. Then, in German-speaking lands, historians often point to a major development: children's birthday celebrations known as Kinderfest. These are frequently linked to the more recognizable birthday cake tradition, complete with candles corresponding to the child's age, and sometimes one extra candle for the hope of another year of life. This is getting much closer to the format we know today. And that may be the biggest evolution of all. The birthday became democratic. It moved from the throne room to the family table. When people begin celebrating children's birthdays, they are not just tracking time. They are declaring that this small individual life matters enough to stop everything for a moment and mark its existence. This is also the moment where the emotional engine of the modern birthday really turns on. A child's birthday is memory-making. It creates photographs, expectations, rituals, and identity. It tells the child, "This day is yours." Cakes existed in ritual settings long before modern birthdays. Candles carried symbolic force in religious and folk traditions. Fire could honor, protect, bless, or represent life itself. By the time birthday cakes became a household custom in Europe, candles had become part of the emotional theater of the event. By the 18th and 19th centuries, more accurate record-keeping, rising literacy, changing family culture, and expanding middle-class domestic life helped birthdays spread further. The printing of calendars, personal documents, and birth records made dates easier to track. Better survival rates in childhood also changed how families emotionally invested in yearly milestones. Industrialization later made sugar, candles, decorations, and mass-produced party goods more accessible. A tradition that once belonged to rulers and elites could now belong to almost anyone. The birthday was becoming scalable. And then, modern media did what modern media always does. It standardized emotion. The song "Happy Birthday to You," derived from an earlier tune by Patti and Mildred Hill, became one of the most recognizable birthday rituals in the English-speaking world. Once a society has a common song for the moment, the ritual becomes even stickier. It no longer has to be invented every year. Modern real-life birthday party, camera drifting past smiling guests, as subtle animated subscribe prompt appears beside candles. Now here is the deeper reason birthdays survived everything. They solve a human problem. That is why birthdays can feel joyful and uncomfortable at the same time. They celebrate survival, but they also remind us that time is passing. They are parties with a built-in shadow. Birthdays were never just about fun. They were always about significance, about crossing a threshold. And that means the next time someone leans over a cake, closes their eyes, and makes a wish, they are doing something far older than it looks. Behind that little moment stands a pharaoh's divinity, a Greek ritual cake, a Roman household feast, a Christian argument, a German child's candle, and centuries of families deciding that a person's existence deserves one day set apart from all the others. Maybe that is the real history of birthdays. Not just when they started, but what they became. A way for human beings to say, in every age and every language, "You were born, you are still here, and that matters."